Well, the impeachment showdown has certainly taught us one thing, that bipartisanship is all but dead in Washington. Not a single Republican voted for either article of impeachment, though a former Republican, now an independent, did. And only 2 Democrats voted against the first article, while 3 voted against the second article. And the rhetoric is, well, it's even worse than those numbers. Take a listen to a few Republicans and their over-the-top comments.
On December 7th, 1941, a horrific act happened in the United States. Today, December the 18th, 2019, is another date that will live in infamy.
Pontius Pilate afforded more rights to Jesus than the Democrats have afforded this president.
This country's end is now in sight. I hope I don't live to see it. This is an outrage.
Hyperbole always in vogue. And with that, let's bring in our next guest, former Congressman Leonard Lance, Republican from New Jersey. Congressman, as we watch the impeachment debate play out in the House, I think we all expected partisanship, but maybe not with the rigidity with which it actually happened. A lot of Americans, a majority, in fact, if you look at polling, believe that the president clearly committed questionable acts related to Ukraine, even if you don't think they were a crime, even if you don't think they were impeachable, but that something was out of the ordinary. But I never got that from the House GOP during the impeachment debate. There were no questions about the president's actions, no concerns, no desire really for any side, for oversight. You've always been an independent thinker, Congressman. Given that, how can you and how can we take the Republican defense of the president seriously when no one in the party seems to think that there's even cause for concern about his actions?
I think there's been over-partisanship on both sides, Andrew, and I hope and expect that there will be a Senate trial in January. I do not agree that the telephone call was perfect. But I think that there were other avenues to pursue, perhaps criticism of the president through a censure vote. But I would urge the Senate to take up the matter in an expeditious fashion so that we can reach a conclusion on this serious issue.
But what was your reaction to your former colleagues, your former Republican colleagues in the House, and their arguments on behalf of the president? The fact that so many seem to have no problem with anything that the president did. Does that jive with how you saw what happened and what played out? I know you want a Senate trial, but, you know, has the Republican Party helped itself with this defense of the president?
I think that there were some Republicans who recognized that the telephone call was not perfect. And I'll give you an example, Andrew. Will Hurd of Texas, for example. I disagree with those Republicans, colleagues of mine, who believe that the telephone call was perfect. And I hope that in the Senate there can be the facts as they are presented on both sides, both by the president and by the House managers.
Let me ask you then the converse question of that. Do you give any validity to the concerns that Democrats voiced that the president abused his office, pressured Ukraine for dirt on the Bidens, obstructed Congress, and potentially damaged the balance of powers, sought to compromise the 2020 elections? Do you, from your read of the reporting, is there a sense that you have that their fears may be founded?
I believe that there is always tension, Andrew, between the president and the Congress. And regarding the calling of witnesses, I think that should be determined ultimately by the Supreme Court. That is why the Supreme Court exists, to be the arbiter between legitimate disputes between the executive branch and Congress. Regarding the telephone call, I do not think it was perfect. I think it should be criticized. The question, of course, is whether it rises to the level of removal from office.
Question about the optics of all of this for your party, Congressman, and it's going to be a bad example, I warn you now, but everybody knows a family that has an unruly child, a troublemaker, if you will. You talk to their parents, and if they're concerned, yeah, we're having a hard time with him, we're not sure what to do, that generally gets them some respect and sympathy. But if they say, no, Andrew's just an angel, he's just misunderstood, people are going to think that parent is divorced from reality or just blinded. And Congressman, if Donald Trump is the unruly child in that example, isn't your party playing the role of the blinded parent or run the risk of being seen as one?
I don't think that's true of everybody in the Republican Party. And I hope that the Senate takes this matter seriously. And I do believe there were Republicans in the House who were willing to criticize the president, perhaps through a censure vote. But of course, the Democrats moved forward with impeachment. Nancy Pelosi had originally said that there should not be an impeachment unless there was bipartisanship in that regard. That has not occurred. Let us hope that the Senate trial is conducted in a fair manner. And I hope that that Senate trial, Andrew, will occur in January.
Did you share, Congressman, your former colleagues' concerns about the process as they consistently attacked it during the impeachment hearings and process? That, you know, no party's going to be thrilled that their president is being impeached, but we did get lots of arguments during the debate that seemed over the top, including comparing how Trump was treated to that of Pontius Pilate or the attack on Pearl Harbor. Louis Gohmert said it was the end of the country, or that the end of the country was now in sight. What's your response to those concerns that so many seem to think were somewhat hyperbolic?
I don't think that this is any way an analogy with a Pearl Harbor or with a Pontius Pilate, and that's not language I would ever use. Impeachment in the House is similar to a grand jury, and in a grand jury you hear the side of the prosecution and not necessarily the side of the defense. The Senate is the exclusive venue for the trial, and we will hear both sides of the case in the Senate. I believe that everybody should lower the temperature a little bit and let us proceed in a judicious fashion, because in effect, the Senate is acting as a judge and jury.
Do you think that the Republican Party handled the impeachment process in the House responsibly?
I think there were those who were responsible, but let us move forward and see who the House managers are, and then who is the defense team for the president. And the trial, of course, is extremely important because that could lead to the removal of the president. We're 10 months from an election, Andrew, and I would imagine that the American people will decide this issue in November. I also have faith in Chief Justice John Roberts, and I believe that he will do an excellent job in the chair, as I believe that Justice Rehnquist, Chief Justice in 1999, did an excellent job in the Clinton impeachment.
As you mentioned, this is all happening just a few months before an election. If you were running for your old seat this year, I'm wondering if you would be comfortable with the position that your party has taken on impeachment. We've heard from a number of Republicans and from the president that Democrats are overreaching just to hurt Trump, that they hate Trump and that he did nothing wrong. Do you get that sense from the Democrats? For example, the Democrat who's now in the seat that you once occupied, Tom Malinowski. Do you think he hates the president? Do you think he hates Republicans?
I have never accused any Democrat of hating Republicans, and I don't believe Republicans hate Democrats. And I think we should judge all of these issues based upon the facts. And I would hope that we could come together as a nation. This is an election year upcoming in 2020, and I'm sure it will be very vigorously contested. But Andrew, I would like to move forward in a bipartisan capacity, especially once the election is over. What unites us as a nation is far greater than what divides us politically. And I hope that the great issues confronting the country can be addressed. And I hope that those issues are discussed in the upcoming campaign.
I think most people watching, most Americans want to move past this and want to get onto a more bipartisan footing. But I have to ask, because again, the leader of your party is saying Democrats and the Speaker of the House, they don't just hate him, which is questionable, they hate Republican lawmakers and they hate all Republicans. Now, I know you've never said that, but that the leader of your party is saying that, and so many are, I'm just curious your response when you hear that kind of rhetoric.
I oppose that rhetoric. I don't believe that those in public life should hate each other. I think we should try to work together in a bipartisan capacity where possible, and where that is not possible, to disagree in a civil fashion, recognizing that you should take into consideration the other person's point of view, but also recognizing that there are legitimate differences, and those differences should be discussed freely and fairly, always with respect.
Do you see impeachment being a big issue on the campaign trail on the congressional level this year? And if so, do you think it favors Democrats or Republicans?
I think that it's likely that the impeachment trial will occur early in the year. I hope in January, Andrew, and then we will move beyond that. I do not think that the president will be convicted and will have to leave office. And then I would imagine during the Democratic primaries, there will be a discussion of the issues that confront the nation. And I think that will be true on the Republican side as well. And while impeachment may be an issue in November, I don't think it is as likely to be as great an issue as some might believe at the current time.
Leonard Lance is a Republican who represented New Jersey's 7th district in Congress until earlier this year. Congressman Lance, pleasure to see you again. Happy holidays, Happy New Year.
Happy holidays and Happy New Year to you, Andrew.
And up next, speaking of the 2020 elections, we'll take a deeper look at the race and ask who's gaining traction as we get closer to the kickoff of primary and caucus season. Don't want to alarm you, but the Iowa caucuses are now just 7 weeks away.